David Novak is here, Yum Brands co-founder and former chairman and CEO. Of course, he's also the co-founder and CEO of digital leadership platform Ogo Lead and a CNBC contributor. And it's always great to see you.
It's great to be here.
So what do you make of because we're going to be hearing later today, and Steve Leisman's down in D.C. on the interest rate issue. What do you think will happen? What do you think should happen?
Well, I think things are going to stay the same, and I think that's what should happen. And I don't really think that the rates should just continue to prop up the economy. You saw the market move just on the thought of the rates being lowered. I think the rates are solid right now. That's where I would keep them. I don't think there's any need to overreact.
And you don't feel that the economy is turning towards it, either sideways or down? I
think the economy's good. I've talked to a lot of business leaders recently. Everybody feels good about the economy. I mean, there's a lot of noise about trade, but I think trade is more of a business issue than it is a consumer issue. You've got unemployment all-time low. You've got more jobs out there that can't be filled. I think all the factors.
And you don't think that trade is going to be a drag on all this?
I think trade could become a drag because when I talk to business leaders, I talk to somebody who has like 30 different companies, and people are very worried about 2020. And I think that's going to be the big volatile year, the election year. And I think so people are really shoring up their balance sheet. They're just kind of nervous. And, I think there could be good news on trade. There could be bad news on trade. We don't know. I mean, yesterday you had Trump talk about his meeting. And, right now people are being whipped around on trade. The market's so volatile because...
But companies are already making moves. We have news that Apple is planning to move some of its business out of China in terms of manufacturing capacity, irrespective of what happens on trade. We have an interview with the CEO of Huawei, which, of course, has become this sort of hot potato in the middle of this trade issue, also a national security issue at the same time.
Right. I mean, Huawei's obviously a national security problem. I mean, they don't deserve a level playing field here in the United States. I think what Google's doing just makes sense. I think what Trump wanted to do was bring as much business back to the United States as he could. He's doing it. I think that's happening. He's basically done everything he said he would do. Now, whether you like him or not, the guy has taken on China for the first time, first guy to ever do that. And I think it needs to be done because, obviously this issue with intellectual property is huge. It's much more important than the balance of trade. And I actually think that the big issue that we're going to have in the future is all about technology. And one of the things that does bother me, just listening to the Google news, is that more and more people now are putting pressure on our technology companies. Well, meanwhile, you don't see that happening in China. They're unleashing the power of their companies. And I think we've got to be very careful because the one war we don't want to lose as we go forward is the war on technology.
You've done a lot of business in China. So what have you seen on the ground? When people talk about intellectual property theft, when they talk about the culture that is creating some of these issues?
Well, see, for us, when I was the CEO of Yum, we didn't have any problems. I always said the only intellectual property we had was the Colonel Sanders 11 herbs and spices. And he had the secret recipe. But what we really represented on the ground in China was jobs. When she goes to bed every night, one of the things he wants to keep the economy moving is he wants jobs. And that's what we provide.
But did you feel the hand of government in China in any way?
Yes, but not to the point where it really limited our business. We had great people on the ground who knew how to get things done in China, and we were able to open up restaurants within 3 months. In the United States, it'd take you a year. Things move quicker. We moved all the way into Tier 8 cities. We expanded very rapidly. We continue to expand rapidly. I say we. I'm no longer running the company. But, I'm obviously interested in the business.
You're an interested observer. So.
Yes, a very interested observer.
I was just saying, if it's $30 billion, and none of us thought that at Huawei. We didn't know it was that serious. I wonder what the total number really is at this point and how much heat she is really under. I think, and you're right. They're trying to transition into a modern society, but instead of having 300 million people, they're trying to do it with like however many people they have. That's not easy, and you don't need any external roadblocks that you might be able to deal with if you just play it right. I think that he wants to play it right, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I really do. It's interesting, Joe. When I used to go to China, all of our people, I think everybody thought that China would move towards a much more democratic model over time. I don't really see that happening today, and I don't think the people on the ground in the company necessarily see that happening today. So I think there's much more pressure, much more control from the central government, and I think that's really a fact of life.
As long as people's lives are getting better, they're going to be fine with that, with not being as free as we are, I think. But once they see any type of slowdown in that, then they got Tiananmen Square problems again, or Hong Kong problems.
You know, and I think social media exacerbates all this. It's a bigger issue. But I think China wants a deal. I mean, I think we want a deal. China wants a deal. I don't know how big a deal it's going to be, you know, but I think for both sides, both the U.S. interest and China.
There could be a deal, though, that actually incorporates Huawei. I mean, that's something the president's talked a lot about. And yet, at the same time, we had Secretary of State Pompeo literally sitting where you were, who said it is an absolute national security threat to our country. And it's hard for me to understand how it can be both a national security threat and a pawn in the larger negotiation, which is to say, if it's a national security threat, it's a national security threat. If it's a pawn, it's a pawn. But the two cannot be both.
China in general is a national security threat and a trading partner. So any trade that we do, hopefully, gives us some concessions in the national security threat that makes them less of it. So the same thing with Huawei. You get some concessions on Huawei to make it less of a national security threat, and you throw it into the overall trade. There's a way of doing it, don't you think?
I think it's really, really complicated, and that's not a great insight, but that is the case. And you know, that's a big bargaining chip right there. That is.
Is there a way that
one.
You'd feel more comfortable with Huawei and everything 5G in this country?
You know, I think that from basis what I know, I don't know enough to really make that statement, you know, make a statement one way or the other. Right now, I would be uncomfortable, you know, making concessions.
You made an important point about what's happening in terms of the way the U.S. government is treating our big tech companies relative to the way China treats its big tech companies. Therefore, what? Meaning, you look at the scale and scope of a Facebook and some of the problems that they've had in the past, and Google and Amazon, which are under fire. Even just today, or yesterday rather, Facebook announces this Libra new cryptocurrency, and the first thing out of the mouth of Washington is press pause, stop this before it gets started. We need to understand everything about it. The question really is, what should the role of government be with these companies of this size and scale?
Well, I don't think they should be broken up at all. You know, I think if they have any kind of monopolistic practices, those should be addressed. And I think they can be addressed in a different way. And, you know, let's see what happens. But I think, you know, my point is that we've got to create an environment in the United States where we win on technology. We can't take a backseat to anybody there. And, you know, I think that you've got a lot of resources. You know, even if you look at Huawei, they've got 21 R&D centers around the world, okay? You know, so we're not sitting in this vacuum where we own everything anymore. So,
Unfortunately, Huawei's been stealing so much of our own IP along the way.
I know, that's another reason. That's why, you know, it's very difficult to be talking about concessions.
So you acknowledge that now? So
on IP, my view has always been, yes, they have been terrible on IP theft.
He's never said more positive things about a company than Huawei. That's your...
No, my issue has always been...
You love that company.
My issue has always been it could absolutely be a potential
one company he likes.
It could absolutely become a national security threat if the Chinese government were to use it as such, but that there's no evidence it's being used as such. Having said that, there has been a lot of IP theft in past and prior years. Whether that's still going on, I think, is unclear.
I didn't use my free taco day yesterday. Can I get two next year?
You know, listen, Joe, as much money as you make, I mean, you don't need it.
You know what? That's exactly what I said yesterday. The rate limiting problem is not the cost of the tacos. That's not why I don't eat them 3 meals a day.
I love the fact that you love Taco Bell, though.
The love is not as strong enough.